Consult an advisor or conduct your own due diligence when making financial decisions. General principles discussed during this program do not constitute personal advice. This program is furnished by Dentist Advisors, a registered investment advisor. This is Dentist Money. Now, here's your host, Reese Harper.
Welcome to the Dentist Money Show, where we help dentists make smart financial decisions. I'm your host, Reese Harper, here with my rusty old co-host, Sir Ryan Isaac.
It's a fine line between trusty and rusty.
You are a trusty co-host, but sometimes you're rusty.
It's true.
So today we've got to get the oil out and oil up those wheels.
Yep.
Because you're going to tell us a story that is one of my favorite stories of all time.
You love this story.
It's about the famous Northeastern midge. I just want people are probably thinking, what's a midge?
What is a midge?
A midge is a fly-like insect.
Yes.
That I just learned about in preparation for this podcast and found it quite interesting. Thank you, Q, for digging deep into the archives of American folklore.
Yeah.
Anytime, I'm here for all of your insect needs.
Thank you.
So why are we talking about midges today? So back in 1990, this is according to the Pittsburgh Press newspaper. Okay, this didn't happen in Pittsburgh. There was a serious concern with the conditions of the Lincoln and Jefferson Memorial buildings.
Your two favorite buildings, the places you love to visit.
Located in
Washington, D.C.
Okay, not Pittsburgh, yes. But the big problem with these two buildings, there was a team of architects that was hired. They were hired for $2 million to do this exhaustive study on both monuments and recommend repairs. The problem is that, if I get this right, the problem was that the buildings were eroding, right? The outside, the facade of the buildings were just like cracking and falling down, and they were constantly having to repair them. So they spent $2 million, hire some architects, and they came up with a plan that was going to cost $12 million to fix the buildings.
Sounds like a good dental consulting job.
It sounds like we're about to go into a story about building a custom home. Actually.
But we're not.
But we're not going to launch into that right now. So what they did is the Park Service, they hired the architect team. They have their plan, their big $12 million plan. The Park Service, though, did its own investigation. And they found some interesting things. They kept asking some questions, like, why are we doing this? The first thing they found is that these buildings were being sprayed constantly, like high pressure washed with a chemical, right?
A really strong chemical.
A really strong chemical on a frequent basis. So then they asked, well, why are we spraying the building so often with these chemicals? And then they learned that these sparrows and starlings, which are birds, okay, for our non-bird aficionado listeners, these sparrows and starlings, they were pooping all over the buildings in high volumes.
So they were having to spray the buildings with these strong chemicals to get the bird poop off the building.
And that seemed natural. Like, there's bird poop all over. We got to spray it with these chemicals. Well, then they asked, well, why are there so many birds all over the place? Then they learned it was because there are spiders all over crawling around the buildings, which I don't know if the tourists really know that that's the case. But apparently there's spiders everywhere, and these birds like to eat the spiders. Then they asked, well, why are there spiders everywhere? Well, just like you started the podcast, there are spiders everywhere because the spiders like to eat these things called
midges.
Yeah, there's the famous American midge.
The deceptive midge.
Decepticon midge. So there's these midges, these little flying insects. So then they asked, why are there midges all over these buildings? It turns out these midges I don't know how long they live. They have this like a couple days or something. They have this short reproductive cycle, which involves them coming out of the ground. A flying bug comes out of the ground?
Yeah.
Weird. That's why you love the midge so much.
Yeah, it's a deceptively interesting
That's
insect
why you said that.
with a very short life.
They come out of the ground at dusk, and they come out of the ground and they're attracted to the floodlights that light up the monuments. Then they do their mating business, and then they die next to the monuments where the spiders then come out and feast on them. So what was the solution then? All they did was they decided to change the timer on the floodlights so the midges don't come around at dusk. And that's it. No midges, no spiders. No spiders, no birds. No birds, no poop. No poop, no strong chemical, high-pressure washing. No problems with the deterioration of the building.
Yeah, and so even though the solution looked like it might be $12 million in repairs that were going to be needed, it turns out all you had to do was turn off the lights. And they even saved a little money on their electric bill.
Okay, so today, talking about these monuments and this big multi-million-dollar fix that involved actually just turning off the lights a little sooner or turning them on earlier or later in the day, we're going to talk about times when dentists think that big sweeping changes are the solution to the problems or the stresses they're feeling, when actually a more simple fix will get them back on track quicker.
Desperate times don't always call for drastic measures.
That's going on a t-shirt.
I think I'm going to come up with, that's my saying, trademark.
Yeah, when you're gone one day,
word mark.
Hundreds of years from now.
So I think what we wanted to, this came up this week in several conversations. I was actually did a podcast recording with Dr. David Maloli in Vail, and we kind of got off on this side tangent where me and him started talking about how many people will do pretty big sweeping changes in their lives. And
we had a conversation about this.
Yeah,
Cool.
It came up, and I just remember feeling like it was a topic that I was really passionate about, and I didn't get a lot of time to go into it in the podcast and with him. But I really felt like this was a subject that has affected me a lot in my life, where I feel pain. I come into the office and I feel some frustration. I'll give you an example. It just happened this morning about 10 minutes ago before I got on this show. I'm on the phone and a doctor tells me that he doesn't want to hire an associate anymore. He just doesn't want to hire him.
Okay. This is someone that already had one or was thinking about it?
Well, they've been courting for like a year now, right?
Oh.
So they've been working together.
Testing it out.
They've been testing it out, and he wants to bring this associate full time to kind of help him grow the practice, potentially partner with him. And they've been working together for a year plus. They get along really well. They're friends, you know. Okay, and this is literally like this probably happened 10 times in the last month. So, because it's a big decision where someone's like they're feeling ready to hire this associate or bring on a partner and finally do this big decision together, and they just last minute just like backs out, and he calls me. I hear
about this a lot.
Yeah,
but when new dentists call us and I'll ask them about what are you working on right now? Where do you work? Or what, and they'll say like, I was going to get into a practice, but then the dentist at the last minute said, never mind, I don't want to. That actually is really common.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
And so I'm asking this doctor, I said, why do you feel that way? And he said, I don't know. Like, it's just, I'm going to have to bring this person on. And basically it boiled down to a difference of like maybe $700 a day in profit that he felt like he was going to lose by bringing this person on. And that was his understanding of the situation. And I was listening to him talk, and I was typing some numbers on a spreadsheet and just kind of like looking at what he was telling me. I'm like, collections, okay, this is your collections assumption. This is what you're going to be paying him. I've seen your P&L. This is what your overhead will look like. This is what's going to change. And you're promising this amount in benefits. And so I just, as he was talking, I'm just typing it in.
Totally natural thing for a human to do when another human's talking to you.
Yeah,
just whip up a spreadsheet real quick. Yeah.
So I sent it to him. I shared it with him, and like he pulls it up and looks at it. It just right after he get done, like telling me like how he's just really frustrated and was not going to do this.
It's going to be a bad deal.
He wanted to know if I could break the news, like if I could break the news to this person, instead of him break the news. Like he's just too good of friends with him, so will you break the news for me? I was like,
that would have made your day a lot worse than it.
I'm like, no, but we could do it together. I'll do it together with you. I said, let me just make sure that the things you're saying are correct. And I sent him the spreadsheet over. He looks at it and saw that by bringing this associate on, he's actually going to make more money. And he just wasn't thinking about it the right way. And it accomplished everything that he wanted this transaction to accomplish. And I don't get paid to, bring on associates, and I don't have a bias here at all. But I just was surprised that as soon as I set that spreadsheet over, he looked at it and he goes, never mind. Okay. And
little does the associate know that his life was hanging in the balance of this phone call.
The thread of this young associate's life is hanging in the balance of this phone call. And someone goes from like,
he's done.
I think it was literally like he was frustrated about something that happened that morning with the construction of his new office. Like this build out. I think he was frustrated about the build out of his new space. And it resulted in him taking out that emotion on this conversation about the associate. Yeah. Because he was feeling like this thing was going over budget a little bit.
So where can I cut?
And so
he's the Netflix of the household.
And so it's like, all right, well, we're going to be done with that. And I sent him the spreadsheet. He's like, all right, never mind. We can talk about something else now. I was like, whoa.
That associate's lucky that your first inclination was to whip up a spreadsheet.
Yeah. I think that's maybe the first example I'd like to share is sometimes we make a huge decision like firing someone or not hiring someone off of an unrelated item. Like in this case, I really think it had to do with his cabinetry expenses being a little bit more than he thought. And that was kind of the main trigger. It's interesting how an emotion like being a little bit over budget on something can make you kind of look somewhere else and maybe make a cut, which in my case, I was looking at this, I'm going, okay, if you don't continue this relationship with this associate, if you don't continue, well, you're already doing like 75% more production than you can do on your own.
Yeah.
Like you're already almost full time with it. What are you going to do with all that production?
Yeah.
You're just going to let it disappear?
Right.
And he's like, well, he's like, you're right. And I'm not trying to say that this doctor is not intelligent. This happens a lot where it's just easy to sort of make a big sweeping change around hiring or firing someone when it might be a relatively unrelated issue that's the trigger that made you feel that way in the first place.
Yep.
So
it reminds me of the day when you walked around the office and fired everybody.
And then I changed my mind.
And then you changed your mind.
You called us all later.
We were all back to work.
We got a group text.
That was yesterday. Just kidding.
It's like every Thursday.
Yeah. Every Thursday.
That's a good example. Another one that we were talking about was sometimes we'll talk to people that feel the pressure in their, let's take, for example, one doc, one location, feeling some pressure from maybe hitting a ceiling in collections, or maybe it's like income. Like I'm not making enough money. I feel like I got to make more money. And sometimes the knee-jerk reaction is another location.
Yeah.
Let's add another practice to this. The disclaimer to this being many people do that, and it is the solution, and it's great. It works.
Think restaurant franchise.
Yeah. If I just had more, I'm just going to get more money, right? So it's kind of along the same lines, that's kind of like whatever the trigger is. It could have been, maybe it's low profitability. Maybe it's just not the income they thought it was. Maybe it's the doctor's spouse is spending too much money at home and there's not enough communication and cash flow is feeling tight and they can't talk about it. So the doctor goes, I'm just going to open another location and just try to double my collections, and then I don't have to like fight it about the budget at home or something,
Yeah.
It could be some really external trigger that makes them push for like the big solution. When what could it be instead? Like this morning you fixed what could have been a very large decision.
Yeah.
By just a little bit of data.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like we're as business owners, I'm always surprised how a little change makes me feel a lot better. And I might have I'm classic, like massive sweeping change kind of mindset. I love making big changes, right? I want to see I want to see an entire piece of technology built like overnight.
Yesterday.
Yeah. And because I think that's as an ambitious entrepreneur, you want to see big changes happen. Right. You want to see big positive changes.
Yep.
I'm also there's a difference between ambition and wanting big changes and then being very volatile in how you make changes.
Yeah.
You can want things, but executing things in massive sweeping changes quickly is probably not. That's the difference that we're saying here. It's okay to feel the pressure of like all of these decisions
and explore
the options. But making decisions without research, or making decisions without information, or making decisions without exploring alternatives, that's where you get yourself into trouble.
Yeah.
So like take this example of a second location. Before you make the decision to examine a second location, do you know what your personal net worth even is? Do you know what you're worth? Mm-hmm. And do you know how much money you really would need to have before work is optional? Because for a lot of people that I've found, the level of work that they pursue multiple locations, not just to fulfill their entrepreneurial ambition, but they do it because they think that they won't be able to have enough wealth if they don't do it, or that it's the smart thing to do.
Yep.
When in a lot of cases, they wouldn't make the choice to add the second location if they knew
had they known they
were already okay, or that work was already optional for them, or they were going to be financially just fine. You should explore things like maybe adding hours, maybe shifting your employee mix, maybe adding an associate that's more capable or more competent, or one in the first place, or looking at your overhead and trying to determine whether it's being allocated effectively.
Maybe you could cut your lab bill a little bit, or maybe the supplies could come down a couple percent.
Yeah, maybe your lease could be renegotiated in the middle of your term.
Maybe the tax bill could come down a few percent. Maybe we've talked about this. Maybe insurance plans haven't been looked at for a long time. Maybe you're running a loss on a big chunk of your insurance plans that you're accepting. Maybe you haven't raised fees in a while.
Maybe the interest rates on your debts are too high and you could refinance them.
Lots of maybes.
There's a lot of options that might not involve a big thing like opening a second location.
Yeah.
But how many people have we met with 2 or 3 locations and not one of those locations is really being run properly?
Yeah, it's not optimal. Yep.
And so, you don't want to make big sweeping changes without exploring all these alternatives. And you will be tempted throughout the day, every day, to make a big change.
Yeah.
And usually a small incremental change is a little better.
It's kind of like me when I wake up and it's cold and I'm like, I think I should just move my whole family to a warmer state tomorrow.
Item number 2 today that we wanted to talk about that's a big gut reaction that we see a lot is people make big changes to their investments.
Yeah, well, so one example we have, this is not an uncommon conversation. It wasn't this year because the market's been great, but a couple years ago, there was a few conversations where people would call and say, the market's down 8 or 9 or 10% right now. I have student loans at 6%. Therefore, it makes total sense to just get my investments out of the market, pay off my student loans. I got the spread, I got my guaranteed rate of return. Or someone might say, maybe they're not going to pull their investments, but they might say,
so let me clarify that for the listeners. You got this second nature numbers wise.
Yes.
So you're just saying someone calls in because their investment account's down 10 to 12%.
Yep.
But they've got a 6% student loan. And so they're feeling like, why am I losing money sitting here
when I could pay this
I could just pay this thing off and at least I'm making money by paying that thing off at 6%, right?
Yep. That was kind of like the big sweeping change to the pain they were feeling. I mean, it turns out after long conversation that wasn't the exact reason for all the pain. It's funny how that works. Like you were talking about with the associate, there's always like some other underlying distant, like the cabinetry was too expensive.
Yeah.
Therefore, fire the associate.
It's funny how the littlest things just kind of throw you
that's
off.
Where the emotion in finance. That's why we talk about this study from Vanguard. I bring it up all the time when we talk about investments with clients or people who call us. When Vanguard did the study that found, people who make better investment decisions are getting higher returns over time. Half of that return that they're getting from making better decisions comes from behavior. I mean, there's a reason, and we're all subject to it.
By behavior, you just mean making smarter decisions that are with your investments, not
totally.
Buying and selling at the wrong time.
In this example that I'm thinking of, this conversation was with a doc who was feeling a lot of pressure with his own practice. He was declining in collections.
Yeah.
Wasn't spending money on marketing. New competition was moving in. But this translated into the market's down. I'm going to take my investments out and pay off my student loans. And actually, it didn't really have much to do with that.
Yeah.
But that was like left unchecked. If he didn't call first, that would have happened.
Well, why would that have been a bad decision?
Because you don't measure markets by what has happened in the last 12 months. I think we just did this on an episode a couple weeks ago with expected return.
What would have happened in this example? Because this is a few years ago. What would have happened in this example had the person taken the money out and paid off the student?
It's highly likely it would have been paid off, and there would have been no more future investment in markets. He wouldn't have invested money again because of that kind of experience. I think back to the actual data from that time, and the markets, when we talked, they kept going down a little bit, but then they ended the year flat. And then they've been going up ever since. So what would have likely happened, which is behavior when people get out during down markets, is that they don't get back in.
For quite a while.
For quite a while. They'll see it run back up and they'll go, oh, that feels expensive, so I'm going to wait. And then they wait too long before they either never do it again or they miss a lot. They miss out on a lot.
So it would have sold at a double-digit loss probably, or a decline of 10 or 12% or more.
It was around there, yeah.
And then moved the money over and paid off a student loan.
Yes.
Sort of locked in a loss.
Yes.
Paid off a rate of return that was lower than what he would have earned had he just done nothing.
Done nothing at all.
Done nothing but let the portfolio just grow back over the next 2 years.
Yeah, and what would have happened is cash would have just piled up in business checking. He wouldn't have had the confidence to get back into the investments again. I mean, part of that human psychology is sticking with your decision too. I mean, once you decide I got out of the markets because it was bad and I did something else, I mean, that psychology is hard to get over.
Yeah, you're fairly defensive about it.
Yeah, that was the decision you made.
I made that call.
Yeah.
So I think it's just important to see, though, that there was multiple consequences of that decision. One was you're locking in losses that you just sold.
Yeah.
You're paying off a fixed rate of return with your money instead of letting it have the possibility of recovering or having upside that's beyond that 6% rate of return.
Yep.
And then you also are putting yourself in a position where you're having to readjust your psychology to make sure that you even feel good about getting back in at a later date. And who knows if you would have.
Statistically, that's been really tough.
So I think that one of these big sweeping reactions we see, there are a lot of people that choose to take all of their money out of their investments and keep them into cash or pay off debt or invest in something different. Mm-hmm. I do see quite often people selling their selling investments that are in public markets, like their stocks and bonds, and buying real estate with them.
Yeah, it feels more tangible.
Based on an assumption about whether something's cheap or expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So this week it happened to me where someone wanted to sell a piece of a large chunk of their stocks and buy real estate in their city, and I'm there's 3 times this actually happened this week that I can think of. But the one that I know the best was the one that is in an area that's close to my wife's family in California, because that market right now has increased quite a bit, and there's a really high lease rate there. There's a high commercial rate. I mean, it's not a cheap market, you know, and ultimately what this person was going to do is they're going to take from one expensive, we'll call it relatively expensive investment. The market has grown in the last few years, and they're going to put it
one
into
investment that's grown to another
investment that's grown a lot. But one is very liquid and diversified, and one is one piece of property that they were wanting to be the landlord over.
So diversification issues, totally.
Yeah, and they felt like it was going to be more diverse and that would be safer, and that their past experience in the last, year had been that they were really happy with the way their house is appreciated, the way their building has appreciated, that
because you only check the balance once a year, man.
Yeah, you check the balance very infrequently. But the thing that's interesting to me is I'm not sure that they realized that their investment accounts had grown as much or more than their real estate had grown. I think it's hard sometimes to ever think that your liquid investments are a real thing.
Yeah,
I don't. There's something about it. It just doesn't feel real to some people.
Even no matter how much you know about it, it's still
like,
kind of feels
that's kind of just a Russian roulette.
It's a little bit of a subjective little casino there, but I kind of trust it.
It really, at the end of the day, like that's as tangible
it's a real asset
as the piece of property you bought. You just don't realize that it's that's the truth behind an investment in a public market. And so, anyway, the point of this section that we really feel strongly about is try not to make big decisions to make massive changes to whether you're in or out of the market.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, disclaimer: if just because you have investments doesn't mean you're in the market or that you're in the right. Just because you have investments and you are investing in something in the public markets in your 401k or a retirement account or a mutual fund.
That could still be in the wrong place.
That could still be in a very, very bad place. All we're saying
very
is
dark place.
Don't assuming that your money's invested properly.
Yeah.
Which would be broadly diversified in a market-based portfolio that has a lot of exposure to the global marketplace.
Different sizes of stocks, different types of companies.
Yeah. Then in that case, you don't want to be bailing in and out of that. But if you're in one sector right now, like energy, or you're in one sector like gold, or you're in one sector like oil and gas, or you're in one sector like real estate,
one part of the market,
one part of a country, that's not what we're saying. That you can't. Those aren't cyclical predictions that you can depend on to be in one sector like that and know that your money's going to recover. I mean, that's not a diversified portfolio.
Yeah, and so I mean, part of that, that's the sweeping decision. Part of some of the smaller solutions someone can make when they're feeling the pressure or the anxiety from investment portfolio, is education. Like you said, some people don't even know what they've got or how much it's appreciated relative to other things they feel like are safer. So understanding what you have is is probably like step one. But there's other things you can do. Like you have control over how much cash is sitting in your business. So if it's feeling like a little bit lean, like build some more cash in the business so you sleep better at night. Have a family emergency fund, that you can like know that you have cash to get at if you need it for personal reasons. If you have any projects looming on the horizon that might need some money, then put aside some short-term money. Know that you're liquid enough, for some short-term projects. You can do some little things that'll give you that peace of mind that won't make you feel so anxious about this crazy market thing over here. There's some little things. They don't need to be these massive changes. You don't need to bail out or make some big changes. So
let's talk about one other big one. I think it has to do with year-end tax decisions.
Yeah.
It's toward the end of the year, you kind of find out how much money you're going to owe. And some people have perfectly estimated through quarterly payments what they're due, and other people kind of have a big surprise. And so 2 drastic measures we see people take usually at the end of a year is they'll fire their CPA and hire a more aggressive CPA.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever that.
That was all in air quotes too.
Air quotes. So you're going to you fire your CPA and you find someone that's more quote unquote aggressive.
Yeah.
We don't, just in case you can't sense the sarcasm, we don't really believe in the fact that there's this magic CPA out there that is so aggressive that you don't have any taxes.
He has a different set of tax laws he operates under.
He totally does, and it's called you'll go to jail if you work with him.
He looks the other way when he gives you his business card.
That's the guy, like don't make eye contact.
It's blank and it's a pager.
He hands you a pager. Yeah, that's true. I mean, how many? I've talked to so many people who feel like that's the solution for their accounting woes. Yeah. Especially during like the tax times.
It's like, oh my God, he's okay, but I don't know, he's not very aggressive.
Like, no.
He's super conservative.
Yeah.
It's like we all hate paying taxes. We all hate it with a passion. Like I do all kinds of things every year within my legal limit to minimize or defer or remove the taxes that I owe. But it's not like subjective, and one CPA can't take an unreasonable position without costing you some pain at some point down the road.
Yeah, some kind of liability.
The other thing people do is they make big purchase decisions.
Just go buy some stuff.
They love buying things. I like buying things.
Like, I don't know. I have a tax bill, and so I bought a truck and I bought $100,000 worth of equipment. And you're like, oh, good. Did you need those things?
Yeah.
Like, no, not at all. It's like my fourth car.
Well, I think you can blame some of this on CPAs that don't communicate clearly with their clients.
Yeah.
Some CPAs communicate really well regarding this topic and others don't. I think many clients that we talk to are under the impression that if they spend $100,000 on something, they save $100,000 in taxes.
You write it off.
It's like,
you remember that Seinfeld where Jerry's like, Kramer, you don't even know what a write-off is.
Yeah, they talk. Yeah, you write it off. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thought. Is like I bought it and I wrote it off. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So you're only saving at best if let's say you're in California right now and you've got a really, really high income, you might be saving 50 cents on the dollar. Mm-hmm. All right. Most states and most of our clients, you're going to be 45 cents, 40 cents. Yeah. So you can think whatever you buy is 40 to 50% off. Here's the problem with that mentality: is if you buy twice as much stuff during your life than you really needed because it was a write-off.
Pretty simple economics.
Then you didn't really ever get ahead. You just had less money. So, I mean, it happens like pretty frequently. You can say, because I get these write-offs, do you think that you're more likely to spend money twice as much than the average person who doesn't get a write-off? I know that's the case. Okay.
How many people own golf carts out there?
Exactly. Now, I'm just saying, well, that was a tax credit.
It was a tax credit one year. A little different.
If you're getting a tax credit for something
and you need
like
that
an electric vehicle, I think you're fine with that.
And you need that electric vehicle.
A write-off doesn't save you as much as a credit.
Not dollar for dollar.
So I just think most people probably end up spending twice as much money
to get the write-off. Yeah.
Yeah, to get the write-off, and then it's like sixes.
Yeah.
And if you spend more, if you're in the habit of spending more than twice as much as you would normally spend, then you start losing money.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty safe to say that when people are looking at write-offs, they don't get the cheapest car They don't buy the cheapest equipment. They don't think about the cheapest CE. I mean, if it's a personal expense, like if you look at the average American consumer who has no business write-offs at all.
And I need some CE. I'm going to do that internet course.
They're very frugal in how they spend money because there isn't really any advantage.
If it's
to
a
them doing
business
it.
one, though, I'm going Hawaii.
Yeah, and the government knows that,
Yeah.
and they want to increase the GDP of the country, so they do that
Consumer
by
spending,
having write-offs be significant for business owners so that it ends up providing for jobs. You just have to make sure that you're doing things you actually need and that you can justify.
Well,
I would much prefer you hiring someone for marketing and spending a $45,000 salary on marketing that actually probably grows your collections a fair amount and you have a chance of making that back.
Yep.
Than just saying, well, I'm going to pay taxes anyway, so I'm just going to I'm going to buy another truck and wrap it, or I'm going to buy another Hummer and wrap it.
Yeah.
When it
Shout out to 1997.
Yeah. You've seen it.
No, they're still in business.
They're running around.
They're still going around. It's okay.
I love them. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm loving
That was
those
like
Hummers.
03. It was like shout out to 03. No, and you mentioned this before. One of the big ways you can fix that impulse of I'm going to fire my guy is just better communication. More often than not, when I hear this and then we give the suggestion, well, how about you try to just set up a more frequent meeting, meet in the spring, in the summer, in the fall. Don't wait until December when he gets to you. And more often than not, the CPA and accounting team's totally willing to do that. And they'd almost rather do it, because they can stay on top of it. So just improve the communications with your accounting team can probably get rid of that impulse to want to fire the guy by the end of the year.
And just make sure when you make decisions and purchases that you're making, you have a plan for things you need, and those things happen to have tax deductions, then great. I just wouldn't let a tax deduction drive a decision that I'm making to either expand, to improve my space, to hire people. Because usually what ends up happening, what do people do with the money that they write off? Anyway, these write-offs, the big pieces of equipment, the TIs, the additional expansion projects, the vehicles, they end up financing those cars. They finance the buildings. They finance the TIs. They finance the equipment. And what ends up happening is by the time they're done paying off that expense and paying the interest on that expense and only being able to write off a certain percentage of it each year. Yeah. It ends up not being that big of an advantage anyway, unless you needed it. Yeah. And I just see too many people buying things that they didn't really need or use, end up financing it, getting a nice tax deduction, eliminating their taxes, but paying things back, like we said a couple weeks ago, is a lot harder than borrowing it. Yeah. And it costs a lot more than you think. And so I think it's just a good thing to remember. Buy things you need and be very careful about saying, I need it.
Yep. And we've talked about another one too we've talked about before is making sure the retirement plan at the office is the most efficient, correct retirement plan that you should have for that tax year. Yeah. And in a dentist situation, they can change frequently. Yeah. Especially the older you get and the more cash flow you have to put into a retirement plan. They can fluctuate quite a bit. And so another way to be more tax efficient, again, have communication with your advisor and your CPA accounting team throughout the year about which retirement plan. I'm surprised how many conversations we have. I mean, it's at least monthly, probably a couple times a month, with people who have had a retirement plan in place for a long time, and it's not good. Yeah. Either it's the structure's illegal, and people don't know, or they've been doing payroll completely wrong, or they've been giving employees tons of money and didn't know that there was another solution for it, and no one has told them that. Yeah. And so just making sure that's the right plan and the most efficient one every year can solve a lot of problems too.
I think that's really great insight. And let's share one quote from our friend Warren Buffett here at the end.
Go ahead.
I don't want people to misinterpret this because we have plenty of podcasts about taking action. But today's podcast is about not making massive sweeping changes.
Cool your jets.
To things that are already not a problem. Yeah. And more often than not, if you follow this advice from Warren Buffett, you'll be in a better spot. Warren says, don't just do something, stand there. A little bit backwards from what you've traditionally heard. Yeah. Okay.
Sounds very familiar.
I think he's used to seeing a lot of like corporate acquisitions and mergers where they're probably done very quickly, hastily. People make investments for very short-term reasons.
Yeah.
And he's the classic like long-term value investor and the type of person that really does something with a lot of research, very purposeful, and then does it consistently and sticks with a plan. And I think for most of us, that's probably a good way to go.
Yeah,
I have a good quote too. This is an original Q quote.
Okay.
Don't hire an architect for $12 million. Just turn off the lights.
See, we're going to end with that one. With that, we will wrap this thing up. We have our episodes of the Dennis Money Show now on YouTube. Dennis Money Show on YouTube. We're also really excited to announce that we are the official podcast for the upcoming Greater New York Dental Meeting this year that takes place just a few days after Thanksgiving. So we're really stoked to be there. We'll be at the show. We'll be recording interviews on the floor.
Yeah, come see us.
Come see us. We love to see people in person. So for registration, that's gnydm.com. We'll put the link in the show notes as well. If you go to our website, dentistadvisors.com, you can schedule a time to talk to us. At the top of the website, there's a link for our calendar. Schedule a free consultation. Or if it's easier for you, just go ahead and give us a call anytime at 833-DDS-PLAN. And thanks, guys. See you around.
Carry on.